Hey, I'm Scott,
And I'm Chris.
and this is Doxologic, where we help you think with your Bible.
Hello, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Doxologic. My name is Bree, and I'm here to bring you another mailbag episode in the new year. Scott and Chris.
Yes.
What's
Hi.
up? Happy
Bree.
New Year.
Really good to be back together in the new
Yes.
year. All three of us,
New
the three
year,
musketeers,
new
the three
mailbag.
amigos.
Yeah.
Great.
Do you
I'll
guys?
stop there before. This is what guys do, you know. We one up each other, and then the lady's like, "What are they doing? These
Okay,
boys
yeah.
are so ridiculous."
So cool. We're friends.
Okay.
Do you guys make New Year's resolutions?
I mean, I actually did not so much make a resolution as much as I took some time to consider some like goals, which I suppose are the same things. And so, yeah, some like some financial, some spiritual, some family life stuff. Yeah.
Some years more formal and some years less formal. Some years I'll like actually write them down, you know, in some sort of like a prayer journal or something like that. That's not been this year, but some clear senses of things I'd love to pursue by God's grace. I think about spiritual components of pursuit. So the word or the idea of communing with Christ and communing with God the Father and communing with God the Spirit, and that Trinitarian, you know, 1 John kind of, we've been welcomed into the fellowship, and our fellowship was with the Father and with the Son. And so communion with Christ is kind of one of those things for me this year. But yeah, so anyway, some things are clearer than others. He was talking about financial things. You could talk about like goals for, you know, church-related stuff, your family. But anyway, that was one of the ones that was clear to me.
What
this year.
about you, Bree?
Thanks. I actually don't like New Year's resolutions as a person. I feel like I enjoy the
Boom,
natural.
roasted. Chris had multiple.
Yeah.
I only have
No,
one.
that's just for me
It's
personally.
getting hot in here, or apparently I wasted my time. So
That's great.
I didn't expect to be asked. I like the natural reflection that comes with the new year.
Yeah.
But I feel like for me as a person, if I want to start something new, it's like the discipline to just start it versus
Sure.
like, oh, I'll wait till the new year. Like
there is a mystique that can go
Yeah.
overboard with like, I'm going to wait till the new year to do it. It's like, well, if you need to stop that sin or pick up that better habit, get started, bro. Like, what
Yeah.
are you
Yeah.
doing?
No time better than now.
But I do hear
whenever
that.
is.
And my wife is kindred with you in that way, not really for
Yeah.
resolutions like that. So I didn't give her my list. No, I'm just kidding. We're going to
You-
talk
I'm
Private-
sure
a
you'll
private-
email it to me later.
Mr. Resolutions. Well, then when he doesn't fulfill them, he doesn't have to tell anyone. No one will know he didn't
Thank
fulfill
you.
them.
You know
Yeah.
who will know?
The
Jesus.
Lord.
Lord.
We should get talking about him,
Yeah.
I think.
Yes, yes,
How's
yes.
that for a
He
transition?
feels so much pressure right
Yeah,
now.
I'm
No,
so sorry,
man.
Chris. I love that you have resolutions. They're
You're
just-
not surprised.
They're not
I'm
for
not
me.
surprised that you don't really care about them. And yeah, I know you're not surprised that I would write down
That's
goals.
true.
You're
That's
just
a
not
good.
surprised.
It's a good view into our characters.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. It's true. We have some questions to work through, so let's just jump in. The first one reads like this. How do I respond to family who claim Jesus but use curse words when they are angry and don't see a problem with it?
Okay, so saying they have Christian family, or at least they're claiming Christ, who use their, let's just say, use their mouth in a foul way, I suppose, something like that. I think of James chapter 3 and the taming of the tongue verse
Sure.
1 through 12, the necessity to have good self-control with our tongue. But now this is, if we talk curse words, we could talk, 4-letter words. They're not all 4 letters, but the common words that are offensive in our culture, just have to recognize there's a function of language here that they're not all the same. Some kind of have a scale, and other times it's a matter of just like, well, that offends you, but maybe culturally it's not the worst thing in the world type of thing. I will say though, it's the cursing in anger, and it's the venting of one's anger, which the fool does. Proverbs tells us repeatedly, and then there's the taming of the tongue or lack thereof that is clearly described as a a pretty major issue in one's life. It talks about your tongue being like the rudder of a boat. It talks about how great a forest is set ablaze by such a small fire. And so rather than focus on precise words all the time, like there's this like list of words that cannot be said, I would advise against some of those words for sure. They're just not appropriate. But it's the heart behind it that I would want to address, of the lack of self-control and the willingness to give full vent to anger in the midst of those curse words that are a problem. But I would say it's the heart that is the core of the issue.
Yeah, I've always found it interesting, like the substitution of a curse word for something that means the same exact thing, and you're using it on anger. I'm like, that's the same thing.
Yeah, like fiddlesticks with all the anger in the world of the F word, as we tend to call it, right?
Yeah,
well, that's a problem
we know
still.
what you're trying to say.
Totally. Yeah. That's a euphemism, am I right? That's like a replacement, right? And it's just like, you're right. That's a good point.
Yeah.
So I think what I would say is self-control is missing. Fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Self-control is fundamentally missing when you are unhinged at the mouth. You've hit a couple verses. Ephesians would talk about this a lot in how the gospel reforms you as a Christian. So you go to the end of chapter 4 and verse 29. Let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths. Now, again, to your idea of like every generation has a list of bad words, right? And I would just certainly say, to your point, you throw those words in there, right, as including corrupting talk. But I think it's actually more than just bad words. So it's not less than, but I think it's more than. Let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as is good for building up. So how is it building up? How is it giving grace, right? Because he says, as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear. So a person that is walking in the Spirit, that is growing in gospel grace, is attuned to every word that comes out. I think about one of the most dangerous, even as a pastor, a preacher, that I wrestle with is Matthew 12, I think it's 10, where Jesus says, you're going to give an account for every careless word that comes from your mouth. Well, that is sobering, to say the least. And a Christian whose conscience is pricked by the word and the Spirit's conviction through the word goes, I got to watch my words very carefully. So I think it's a self-control issue. And then, you can get into... Ephesians chapter 5 goes on and deals with walking as children of light. For the fruit of light is found in all that is good and right and true, and speaking in that way, trying to discern what's pleasing the Lord. And then it goes on to talk about take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them, for it is shameful even to speak of the things they do in secret. And so you think a lot of the bad words and how they have sexual connotations and those kind of things. And we should have a much greater modesty and a much greater sense of self-control. So to the question of how do you address it, or how do you... Well, again, I think you're looking for a humble heart. You're looking for a particular moment. I'm not sure in the middle of like a family gathering where everyone's hanging out and you strongly turn the conversation at the dinner table to that moment.
I've been meaning to tell you.
Yes, really asking the Lord to give you a sense of wisdom for when to have a conversation and to try to do it in the most disarming way. So the only thing that's offensive to them is their own pride being affected by the principle, and not their pride being affected by your approach. Trying to do it with a sense of not controlling them in your correction of them, but because you're for them in their growth as a believer, and you as well are on that road. So they see that as, man, I'm just after it. Like I'm after it for my own soul. Like, let's grow in these things, right? And I would want the same thing from you, to kind of give it that kind of approach, and then just see where they fall on it. If they're not willing to be corrected, if they're resistant,
or cuss at you again.
Or ironically cuss at you. So that's what I would probably say to that.
That's helpful. You heard it here, guys. Watch your mouth.
Watch out. That's good for all of us.
Yeah.
You've been listening to Doxologic, a podcast by Doxa Church in Rocklin, California. To learn more, visit us online at doxa.church.